Alright guys, and welcome to another video. Today I am sat in one of World of Warcraft's most forgotten dungeons, or at least one of the most forgotten dungeons. I've added the Caverns of Time, Old Hillsbrad Foothills. Now, a lot of people playing retail probably haven't seen this dungeon in a very long time, unless you very rarely, you know, it appears in the dungeon finder, but normally you jump onto Wrath of the Lich King dungeons when you're about the correct level to go into Old Hillsbrad Foothills. So not many people see this dungeon anymore, apart from people who play on Burning Crusade private servers like me. And what I noticed when I was playing this dungeon is there's actually a number of very interesting secrets and secret lore references, more so, hidden inside in the dungeon. If you are familiar with this dungeon, as you know, you basically pick up the demolition pack from this guy here, this elf guy, and then you take a flight path all the way to Durnhold Keep. I can't show it on the map because it doesn't. Well, I can, but it kind of doesn't work. But what's interesting is, obviously, we are in the Old Hillsbrad Foothills. If we decide to not take this dragon, we can just simply go to well, we can go wherever we want, but the only area that's really finished is the actual town of South Shore. You can go to South Shore, and there's a number of interesting things in South Shore which are very, very different to the, you know, the normal South Shore, which I'm going to show you right now. So the first thing first, Kel'thuzad, the actual Kel'thuzad before he turned into a lich, just casually walking around with Hel'Killar. Hel'Killar is another boss from Naxxramas, actually, I'm pretty sure of that. So two Naxxramas bosses just hanging around in South Shore before, you know, obviously they turned evil. Now let's go into the inn. There is a popular event in the inn. If you look closely at these NPCs here, most people probably know about this, but basically a number of dialogue speech bubbles appear when you get close to the mobs here. If I don't want to go through it because I'm pretty sure most people know about this, but the characters here are literally talking about the creation of the Ashbringer. So that's what they talk about. That's Commander Mograine before he died. We've also got Tyrion Fordring, and who's that there? Is Cillian. I'm not so sure about that. But you do have Tyrion Fordring's son is actually upstairs as well. So I don't know about these particular characters, but Fairbanks, he's basically the guy who invented the Paladins. He was a priest. His tomb is in Scarlet Monastery. And then obviously we have Arcanist Doan here, which was the last boss of the Scarlet Monastery library. So that's another interesting lore character. Here we have Captain Sanders. Okay, so there's a quest in Westfall that you may know about if you recently played Classic WoW called the... Basically, when you're killing Murlocs, you will drop... an item will drop that basically gives you a treasure map. So it's like a quest on pickup item, and it will send you on kind of like a bit of a treasure hunt to find Captain Sanders' treasure. And if we hang around here talking to these two, the dialogue will eventually change to them like walking outside and actually talking about that treasure map. So yeah, there's the next set of lore characters. Here is another interesting character, Stalvan Mistmantle, as you know in Duskwood, for anyone who recently played on the Alliance in Classic WoW. Stalvan Mistmantle is a really, really long questline called The Legend of Stalvan, which starts in Duskwood from, I'm pretty sure, the Mound of Dirt or something like that. And you have to do a massively long investigation, tracking down Stalvan Mistmantle, and eventually find out he's in a, basically, like kind of like a farmer's hut just up the road from Darkshire, and he's basically a zombie. And there's a lot, basically, if you want to read it, you can go on the Wikipedia page. There's a lot of interesting lore about this character and about basically his journeys through the entire game, but it seems like he stopped at the inn on his travels and, you know, stayed the night. Here is Tallien. So Tallien, another interesting lore character. So this is Tyrion Fordring's son. That's why he's got this massive meaty weapon for some reason. And this again is related to a very long quest line in Classic WoW in the Eastern Plaguelands. Actually it starts technically in the Western Plaguelands, but covers both. The really long quest line, it's quite an interesting quest line. Many people do it for the best in slot items, or pre-rare best in slot items at the end of the quest line, which is called In Dreams. And obviously it's like one of the most tragic and like sad quest lines of Classic WoW, where Tallien actually like obviously dies at the end, and Tyrion can't save him and you can't save him. So because Tallien actually goes and turns to the Scarlet Crusade, and you convince him to basically not to be a part of a Scarlet Crusade and tell him to come home to his dad, but obviously he dies on the way, so that's actually obviously quite sad. Apart from this character, we have Finn Ordelic, who is another important lore character. He actually later becomes a Worgen during the Cataclysm storyline, so that's quite interesting. The next one, that is probably one of the most interesting here actually, is Nephanos, and he's literally just around the corner here somewhere. Actually, I might have to pause a little bit and find him. Yeah, here he is here, and that is basically his original name, because obviously he's called Nephanos Blightcaller in the lore right now, but he's actually called Nephanos Maris. So he was like one of the only rangers to ever be part of the High Elven Ranger Academy, or Force, Army, whatever. And eventually, obviously, he's very important in the lore on retail World of Warcraft now, because he's basically Sylvanas' right-hand man, and has done loads of really crazy evil stuff, and he's just had a really strong presence in the Legion and Battle for Azeroth expansions, and yeah, and here he is just sat around as back when he was a human. Did actually have a quest to kill him in Classic WoW as well, which is another pretty big quest that people do for best in slot items. We've got the Magistrate here. He's not that particularly interesting. I think it's basically exactly the same as he is here, as he actually is, in the normal South Shore. And I'm pretty sure there's one last character, or maybe a few last characters actually, but we got Nat Pagle right here, who is basically a very, very famous fisherman in the lore of World of Warcraft. He's just a very present character throughout the expansions. He is obviously the most illustrious and famous fisherman in the World of Warcraft lore. He basically has his own faction. There's loads of items named after him, because it's basically a lot of things to do with fishing. I'm not an actual expert, because I never really mess around with fishing, but you can look at that on Wildpedia too. They've also got the Zixil, who's an aspiring merchant rather than an actual merchant, who is basically constructing this like Overwatch protection. It's interesting how the name is Overwatch. Don't know if that is, relevant at all. But I think the last thing the last interesting thing is actually in the little house up here. There's a dialogue option from this guy Bartolo Ginsetti, who is just basically talking about how cool his cloak is, and obviously in the in Classic WoW you basically have take a quest from this guy to remake his cloak, and it looks like he has his cloak here. As you can see, it's the typical, I think it's Hillman's cloak or whatever it's called, so you've got that going on there. And then if you look upstairs here, well actually no, it's not upstairs, you've also got what seems to be Nephanos' daughter just lying around. I looked through it on Wikipedia and Wowpedia, and there's not much going on with this character, not much lore about this character, but it does turn out that Nephanos did actually have a daughter. I don't know where else it's been mentioned in the lore, but that is what it is. And obviously it's interesting how a lot of these like citizens that are like walking around are the old human and just the normal old human human models from Warcraft 3. Well, actually they are interestingly the models that were going to be introduced in World of Warcraft, and they are still present if you go into the World of Warcraft beta. These disgusting, ugly modelers do actually still exist in the game, which is funny. I've actually noticed that there are actually extra interesting NPCs that I'm just noticing the more and more I spend time here in the South Shore. If you look at this character, Herod the Bully, that is the actual Herod boss from Scarlet Armory when he was a child. And there's other children running around which are more Scarlet Monastery bosses, but they've like run around and have totally lost one. I wonder if that Caretaker Smithers is one as well. But here we go, Sally Whitemane. So that is Whitemane from obviously the last boss of Cathedral. We also have Reynold Mograine, who is the dude who's basically with Whitemane or whatever, his name is, the Mograine boss at the end of Scarlet Cathedral. And I'm not so sure about this one, Little Jimmy Vischat, so I'm going to look that one up quickly. Actually, I do know who this guy is. He is the boss in Scarlet Graveyard, the one who's torturing people. So, how cool is that? These little 3 children actually grow up to be Scarlet Monastery bosses. And as far as this guy goes here, Smithers, that does ring a bell, so I'm definitely going to look that one up quickly. This guy isn't too interesting actually. I don't know whether he's a quest giver in Classic WoW, but he basically just eventually turns into a Worgen during the Cataclysm expansion. I also found this group of children not really doing anything, but according to my you know, a little research that I did, some of these names are loosely related to some of the death guards in the Tristful Glades during Classic WoW, so maybe these children basically grew up and died and became forsaken. So that's interesting. There's also a beggar here. Like, I don't know what this NPC is doing, but again, he has a very strange model. Seems like this little boy here, J. Lemieux, again becomes a forsaken NPC in Tower Mill, and he sells mushrooms. So that's quite interesting. Now this is something I didn't know. This NPC, Thomas Yant, he sells all of the starter gear for all the classes. This is really weird. And also a pattern for the riding crop, which is actually quite useful. It's interesting how the Druid one isn't here though, because Druid one's actually really cool, but that is totally bizarre. I didn't know this. And there's also an NPC here that was running about. Let's have a look at this. Again with the old model. Oh yeah, and it gives a pretty important enchantment. I don't know if it's important or not, but yeah. An aged Dalaran wizard. There's also these two. If you read the dialogue here, indeed, what a better way to symbolise the bond of friendship and brotherhood between Terra Mill and South Shore by erecting this tower at the halfway point between both teams. It's basically an ironic joke by Blizzard, because obviously this is this point between South Shore and Terra Mill is like the first ever point of like real PvP action in World of Warcraft, so it's actually the total opposite of what he's saying. So yeah. And apart from that, I think I've pretty much covered everything I can cover from this dungeon. I just thought it was an interesting topic because there's a lot of really interesting secret kind of lore facts about from this dungeon. And as you can see, when you get to here, unfortunately, I was thinking if I went further down here, I might be able to see a stable with Arthas's horse in it or something, because I know that for a fact that's where Arthas's horse's grave is. But yeah, I can't. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. But anyway, it looks like there's a cave over there as well. There's always like, you can come to this dungeon and like the more you spend in it, the more you kind of discover about it, which is like a really unique and interesting thing about this dungeon. And yeah, that's basically why I wanted to make a video about it. But anyway, my name is Medigoblin. Until my next video, ciao.